Afternoon and welcome to Leadership Live Tuesday. Once again, we are live every single week and we talk about a topic that's related to leading in a crisis. And how do we do this? How do we manage our leadership? And every week we come up with a different topic and we welcome different people into our live studio on Facebook. So please do say hi. I'd love to hear from you, see who's here. Let us know that you're here and let us know what part of the country you're from or what part of the world you're from, which country you're watching from. So welcome to everybody. I see some people are on and it's really, really wonderful to have you here with me. Thank you for joining and welcome to Leadership Live Tuesday. Today's topic is Rebel or Stickler. And you might have guessed that the topic for today is talking about our natural tendency to respond in certain ways when we're faced with a crisis or a situation that we're not really familiar with. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about. That's what I'm going to be talking about with you today. And I hope that we really can have a conversation. So please do share your thoughts in the comments. And I see Taryn's with us and Liska and Ivan. So welcome to all of you. And do say, where are you watching from? Which country are you in at the moment? And do a little bit of a check-in with us so that we can know where you are. So today's topic, as I said, is Rebel or Stickler. And really what I'm talking about is certain elements of our personality that translates into default responses or behaviors that tend to color how we approach situations. And in this pandemic situation, in this time of crisis and challenge and change and stress, we are definitely having to deal with how do we respond, how do we see the situation as it stands at the moment, and how does it relate to us in terms of our own personality and our own default behaviors. So I want to give a little bit of background in terms of what happens to us in terms of how we respond in different situations. So if we think of our day-to-day, when things are running quite smoothly, we do manage to soften some of our responses. We manage to be much more conscious of how we behave and how we respond. So take, for example, if we were going to go to a party where we didn't know anyone at all, and we'd come into the situation that's a little bit unknown, and we'd have to think about how do we want to behave in the situation. So initially, we'd be a little bit cautious. We'd want to test out the room. We'd want to see who's there. We want to feel around for how this feels for us. And we'd be very cautious about how we show up, how we respond, how we talk, how, energetic we are. And, this is different for different people, everyone according to their own level of comfort. But as we get more comfortable and as we get to know more people, we allow more of our personality to shine through. We let our guard down a little bit. We may be more expressive. If we have strong opinions about something, we may be able to express them more freely. And we begin to show more and more of ourselves and our kind of true natures. Now, in some situations, we do keep those guards up, or we do have a very conscious way of looking at how we show up and how we behave, because we know we need certain behaviors for different situations. And that's where our kind of ability to control how we respond or how we show up in different situations, that's our ability to do that. That's part of being human. So when we're relaxed at home with people that we love and we feel quite okay, we can be much more ourselves than when we're in a new environment, or perhaps when we're at work and we need to show up as a leader or a manager of a team or to our clients in a certain way. We're always kind of assessing how do we want to behave in any situation. And what happens in times of stress is that this becomes way more pronounced. Our ability to kind of have our guard up or to consciously monitor how we show up is actually reduced. What happens in times of stress, we tend to fall back on our default behavior. We tend to kind of just respond way more in a knee-jerk reaction. We don't have that much energy or resources to think about kind of putting our guard up and watch our behavior. So we know that, classic example is in a traffic jam and someone cuts in front of us. What happens? We get angry, we hoot, we may shout, and that's where the whole thing of road rage comes up, because somehow we've been put in a stressful situation, our guard goes down, and some of our default knee-jerk, sometimes undesirable behaviors do come out. And that's what happens in times of stress. And what we've been living with over the past 2 to 3 months, depending on where we are in the world and what our experience is of that, is we've been living with a huge amount of stress and challenge. And then what happens is that some of those default natural responses are going to show up. So what I've kind of discovered through just my interactions with different people is that there are 2 main groups, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. The 2 main groups that have shown up are the one very big group of people who I call the rebels. Those are the people that are not happy with the level of restrictions that have been imposed on us. We have a situation here where government and the authorities have gone into our space and they're making decisions for us, or they're enforcing certain decisions around how we have fun, where we go, when we go, who we spend time with, how we can entertain ourselves, how we can travel, how we can go to work. This is the first time, I think, ever, well, certainly in my lifetime, that the governing bodies or the authorities have gone into my personal space and dictated a whole lot of things to how we should live. So now we have the one big group that shows up, which is the rebels that are saying, I will not have that. I will not have the government come and dictate to me what I should do, how I should do it, how I should behave, when I can behave, who I can be with. I refuse to do that. And that comes in various forms of behaviors that show up as rebellion. So we've seen people who are not wearing masks, or people who may still go and visit their friends in some ways. And I'm really not casting blame on anyone, but I'm saying we kind of test those boundaries, and we need to still have a sense of freedom within ourselves. And that's something that's really important for the rebels. And then we have another big group, which I call the sticklers. And those are the people that operate by the book. Those are the people who follow the rules. The rules are there for a reason. There's an element of trust in the people, in the authorities around us, who are saying to us, we're in a crisis situation and this is how we need to manage it. So we are going to follow the rules. And then people who are sticklers will comply, because they say, it's been decided, this is the rule of the country, so I'm going to do everything I can do to follow the rules. And then I will say, because the world is never split into either rebels or sticklers, it's never black and white, there's a whole big group in the middle. So what I'd like you to think about this as is think about it as a continuum. If you had to draw a line, if you've got a page in front of you, or just imagine that there's a horizontal line in front of you, and on one end, we've got the rebel, the extreme rebel who refuses to follow any rules and who will fight against everything. And on the other hand, we have our sticklers, who are also to the extreme, by the book, follow every rule, don't question, don't judge. So I'm going to ask you right now, if you think, again, it's a continuum. So we've got the 2 extremes, and we've got everything in between as well. We can be anywhere along this continuum. And I will also say that possibly in different situations, we'll find ourselves at different places along this continuum. So I'd like to ask you to take a moment right now and think, on average, where do you think you are in this continuum? And maybe just to have a little bit of interaction and a little bit of sharing, please do write in the comments. If we just give, okay, we've got the rebel as a 0 and the stickler as a 10, okay? So full rebel is a 0, full stickler is a 10. Where would you place yourself on this continuum? Are you willing to share? I'd love to hear some comments on that. So please do share on the continuum. And in the comments where you are, what your number is on this continuum. And I'm just going to say hello to Tessa and Idan. Hello, thank you. Idan says, I think we know which group you belong to. And yes, I will openly share that I definitely tend to the rebel side of the continuum. This has been really hard for me to have what I feel is my life decisions, my personal life decisions being dictated by government. So absolutely on the continuum, where would I say I am? I think I'm at a 7 or 8. I'm still quite compliant. I don't kind of flaunt the rules. I follow the rules as much as I can. I find gaps to exercise some elements of freedom so that I can keep my sanity, and that's where I am. So I'd love to hear from you. Please do write your numbers in the comments. I'd love to see that if you're willing to share. And what I want to say is, as I said, because there are different situations that we can come into and be at different places on that continuum, I will still say that there's a tendency. We all have a tendency to go to one side generally more than the other side. We all have a tendency in terms of our personality, in terms of where we're at. And really what I wanted to say is that it's really important to understand that the reason we have this tendency is because we try and maintain an element of control in a situation where we are feeling a little bit out of control. We're feeling things are uncertain. We have no answers. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what will happen afterwards. So where are we going to be, and how do we maintain control? We go back to the things that we know. We go back to our behaviors that give us a sense of safety and security and control. And for some, that is being a rebel. And for others, that is being a stickler. And again, I'm not talking extremes. We could be anywhere on that continuum, slightly more or less at any point in time, but we have a tendency. And when we want to hold on to an element of control, when things around us are feeling out of control, then we tend to go back to our default behaviors. Our ability to soften that or manage that becomes reduced when we're under stress, and that's what tends to show up. So it's completely natural and normal, and that's absolutely fine. So I see we've got a few sevens with us. Hello, Tanya. Great to have you here. Thank you for joining us. A 7 like me, Liska, like me also, but okay, Liska can jump to a 9, so that's interesting. I know I can also sometimes jump to a 9 for sure. I tend to jump more higher rather than lower, so that's really a good one. And thank you. Please do continue to share. I'd love to see more comments. And then if we go back to these, thinking about these two extremes and thinking about that this is our default, this is our way we want to behave in order to maintain a certain element of control, I would also like to share that this week I had a question that I put out on social media around how do you feel things are going on in your country? Do you feel things are out of control? Do you feel things are in control? Do you feel it's a little bit of both? Or do you not know? You know, I'm just not sure about it. And what was interesting for me is that there was a little bit of a spike, and I know, okay, being a statistician and an actuary, this is really not a valid study, but it's just kind of maybe a temperature test of what's going on. There was a little bit of a spike in terms of a little bit of both. So people are feeling that in their country, it's a little bit in control and a little bit out of control. And then there were quite an equal number of people saying both under control and both out of control. And I suppose that's just dependent on where you are in the world. But the key thing there is to understand that the more out of control you think things are around you, the more you're going to go into stress response and possibly react or respond from that default place of yours, stickler or rebel. And really, the message that I want to leave you with here today, and this is really an important message for the times that we're living in at the moment, is to remember that, first of all, let's be aware. Let's be aware that we are going into some sort of default place because we're feeling stressed and we're feeling uncertain. So start to exercise some self-awareness around that continuum that I spoke about. Where are you on this continuum at any point in time? Take a little bit of a temperature check for you. Where do you think you are today? More rebel, more stickler? And how is that making you feel? So think about self-awareness. What is your default tendency? See how this translates into how you feel. Is this making you anxious, scared, fearful? Is it making you reckless? Is it making you courageous? What is it really doing in terms of how you're feeling inside? And then from those feelings, look at what are the behaviors that then result. Because, for example, if we're going to go into a fearful, anxious space, we may not want to leave our home. I know a lot of people that just don't go out at all. They refuse to step out of the door. And yet there is an element of flexibility that we can exercise even if we're anxious. We can keep ourselves safe. We can go for a walk outside. There are things we can do even though we're feeling anxious. So look at what is your feeling and how does that translate into the behaviors that you're exhibiting? And then, do these behaviors serve you or do they hinder you? How are the behaviors that you're exhibiting serving you, and how are the behaviors hindering you? And then ask yourself, can I exercise flexibility in that? And I think for me, that's the crux, is understanding that we are on this continuum. There isn't one size fits all. There isn't one place that you're in and that's where you're going to be stuck. It's really your choice how you want to walk along this line between Stickler and Rebel, depending on the feelings that you're showing, the feelings that you want to have, and the behaviors that are coming up for you. And for me, most importantly, is really showing compassion and understanding for everybody around you, because we know that everybody has a different personality, everybody has a different way of responding, a default space that they want to go into. And I think in this time, it's really important to just be tolerant and compassionate and caring and empathetic towards the people around us, because we're all doing it from a place of uncertainty. We're all feeling it and we all actually need support. So if somebody's thinking a little bit differently to you, if someone's behaving a little bit differently to you, rather than going to that judgment space, think about, okay, maybe that's driven from their default response and their human need to maintain control and certainty. And that's really what's happening here. So how can I support? How can I show caring and compassion and empathy for the people around me so that we can live better and make the situation a little bit more normalized for everyone? So we've got a stickler here. Oh, I actually just realized that I got this continuum wrong. When I said a 7, I had Rebel on my mind as 10. I mixed it up. So I'm going to have a little bit of a confession here for a moment. I said Rebel 0, Stickler 10, and I placed myself at a 7. That's not correct. I'm way more of a Rebel than a Stickler. So I'm on a 3. I just got the numbers wrong. Sorry, everybody can do that. My mistake. So I would put myself as a 3, and I tend to go into the Rebel. I find those, as I said, those little spots of freedom to express my individuality and express my need to just be out and do what I want to do and not have people just dictate for me. So I went to Tanya at a 7, that's more Stickler, Liska 7, more Stickler, and I see Pearly, thank you, because I see your comment, I'm such a Stickler, probably a 9. Only not a 10 because some things are just habit. Okay, so thanks for sharing that. And yes, absolutely. So thanks for pointing out, because I had my continuum mixed up. So we've got a lot of Sticklers on the call. Are there any Rebels out there with me? Ah, Sarah, yoo-hoo, we've got a Rebel. Yay, yay to the Rebels. Yes, so what I want to say is, and really as a final thought, is the element of showing compassion and kindness. Because from our personal experience of being a Rebel, it's been really tough for me, because people assume that the Rebels are having an easier time because they kind of just do what they want and flaunt the rules and whatever, and it doesn't matter. And actually, the Rebels like me are having a really, really difficult time, because I'll speak for myself, I'm feeling very dictated to, and that's not an easy place for a Rebel to be. So, and I can see that at the same time, the Sticklers get really irritated with the Rebels, because the Sticklers are saying, how can the Rebels be so irresponsible? How can they walk out without a mask? Because they are endangering everyone around us or around them. And I'm saying, well, if I'm just walking down the road and there's no one around me, surely I'll have my mask with me, because I don't want to be completely reckless, and I don't want to put anyone in danger, and I don't want to break any laws and get a fine either. But I'll have a mask with me so that if I see someone or I need to talk to someone, I'll put it on and then kind of keep to the rules. So I find a way to work within it. And for me, sometimes it's really irritating that people say, I can't go out, I can't do this, I can't do that, because you're not allowed to. So what's coming up for me, and that's really the message that I want to leave with you guys today, and I'd love to hear from you if you're experiencing this as well. If any of you have noticed this kind of dilemma, this difficulty of really kind of how do we interact with each other when we're both in such different places. But what I want to leave us all with is the thought around compassion and empathy. And especially if we think of people who are leaders, and everyone is a leader in their own space. And as leaders, we really interact with a lot of people around us who are going to be at different places on that continuum. And the best we can do is offer support to say, we're different, we operate differently, we behave differently. How can we support each other so that we can all get through it? And the second thing is also offer an element of perspective. Let's take a step back, create some self-awareness about what's going on for us, and ask ourselves, is this serving us? And is there a place where we can show more agility or flexibility? Is there a place where I can move myself a little bit on the continuum so that I can show compassion for myself and for the people around me, the people that I lead, the results that I want to get, whether it's in the business or in my community, and really to still be able to live the life that I want. And something that's come up as well is around choices. When we feel that our choice has been taken away from us, we do go into that default space of stress and not being sure how to respond and not knowing what to do with us. So my question for you that I would really love to leave you with today is, how do you create choice for yourself within the environment that we're in? Understand that we might be sticklers, we might be rebels, we might be somewhere in between. And how do we create the life that we still want to live with some element of choice? Don't let all our choice be taken away, because I don't believe that it needs to be. What choices can we still have? What control do we still have in terms of creating the life that we want? And how can we be compassionate and respectful and still true to ourselves in terms of enjoying our life and having that place where our inner country is still thriving? And I've got this from one of my listeners, Anne-Marie. I don't know if you're on the live today, but when I asked that question of how are things going in your country, Anne-Marie shared that in her internal country, things are thriving. And I think that's what we want to get to at the end of it. We want our internal country that's within ourselves, within our mindset, within our thinking and feeling. We want to be thriving even though it's hard. So how can we create self-awareness, ask ourselves, how are we feeling and how do we want to feel? What are the behaviors that will help us to get to where we want to be in terms of feeling, a feeling of well-being, a feeling of, okay, I know that this is where I am and this is what I need to do and this is where I'm going. And then create some flexibility for yourself on this continuum of stickler and rebel. And I'll leave you with that thought for today. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been wonderful to interact with you. And I see some extra comments here, so I'm just going to reflect on those. We've got Annie. Hello, Annie, you're a rebel. Got Edith. Another rebel, but respectful of others too. And I think that's the key, Edith, thank you. And let's hear from more sticklers. I invited the rebels to comment, but I want to hear from the sticklers too. That was just because of my blue earlier around confusing the continuum. So let's hear from some sticklers. And Carmen, another rebel, excellent, great to hear from you. We welcome everybody, the rebels, the sticklers, and everyone in between. We're all part of creating this magical world that we're living in. And it may be tough right now, but the way I believe we can get through is through tolerance, caring, compassion, understanding that there is room for everyone, and also exercising a little bit of flexibility for ourselves on that continuum. And I take that advice for myself too, because I know that as hard as it is for me to keep to the restrictions, wear the mask, keep the distance, I need to do it, because that's part of what we're living in today, and we have a social responsibility to each other as well. Tolerance, compassion, empathy, perspective. Thanks everybody for joining me today. It was wonderful to be here, and I will see you next week, same time, same place, and we are going to be talking about Groundhog Day. That's the topic for next week, so do join us. And just to let you know, if anyone's missed it, the replay always goes onto my YouTube channel. Please do feel free to watch there, subscribe, and watch previous episodes, because we've had, this is the 13th Leadership Live that I've been doing. And Liska, maybe you can put the link to my YouTube channel onto the comments. And please do go on there, comment, watch, keep the conversation alive. And thank you for joining me always. Have a beautiful Tuesday.